Hey guys, it's Angela Humphries here again, coming live. I got a couple of featured guests tonight. Michelle, Travis, and Jeff is going to be with us in a second. So you guys just take a second to introduce yourselves. Welcome, Jeff. We're just doing introductions. Go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead and start us.
Hey, Michele Morrow here in Cary, North Carolina. And I am a nurse, concerned citizen, and I've been politically active since we moved back about 6 years ago, and just trying to keep our rights here in North Carolina.
Sounds good. Jeff, you want to go next? Tell us who you are, where you are.
I'm Jeff Dobson. I'm the owner of Dobson Law Firm. My office is in Cary, but I actually live in Pllc.
Okay.
And before I was an attorney, I was prior military.
Very nice. Thank you for your service.
Army.
Excellent.
All right, Travis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Travis Groo, and I also live in Cary, North Carolina. I am the vice chair of the Wake County Libertarian Party, and I am also running for office for NC Senate District 17. And I am extremely politically active, as you could imagine. So thank you all for having me on tonight.
Yeah, I think so. I'm Angela Humphries. I'm politically active too. But so I think the 3 out of the 4 of us are active in the community. The 4 of us are together, because we care about our freedoms, I think, and we're doing this live broadcast to inform the public who may or may not be watching this live or watching it after it's taped, to go over rights pertaining to the freedom to assemble, right, Jeff? And so Jeff has given his time so graciously, working with his law firm and I don't know, hopefully you didn't have to do too much research today, Jeff, but I greatly appreciate what work you have put in. We volunteer our time all the time. So it's nice to find someone else willing to give, especially with your level of expertise. So thank you. And for your service, your military service.
So before we start, I just kind of want to say there's kind of a disclaimer. So I can tell you how I interpret it, how case law interprets it, but even if that's the law, that doesn't stop a police department from arresting somebody.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean, especially in certain counties, that isn't going to stop a district judge from convicting you if they disagree with how I say the Supreme Court has ruled. I mean, I'm willing to take on any case and it doesn't matter, but just understand that every situation's a little bit different and every facts play a little bit different. And I can just kind of give a broad overview of how things are.
Sure. Yeah, we can just broadly talk about that. You're familiar with that. What was it called, Michelle? Reopen, #reopen NC rally. And if there's going to be another one next Tuesday, they were planning to do a second and a third because they want businesses to reopen in the state of North Carolina. So they assembled. Some were socially, or is that what you call it? Socially distanced or whatever.
Yeah.
Some remained in their cars while some did not remain in their cars. And got out of their cars, but it looked like for the most part, they were keeping their distance from one another. So that iconic picture with the 2 Raleigh police officers with the amplifying equipment.
I think you're cutting out a little bit, Angela.
Yeah.
Some internet.
Yeah. Well, and I can finish out. I was there, and I think what she's talking about is actually there were about 15 police officers that were standing on the other side of the parking lot from us, all just kind of grouped together. And their statement was that we all needed to leave, or they were going to arrest us. If they were going to arrest us if we didn't leave because we were not following the executive orders of of Governor Cooper. And so people even asked them, is it an issue of us being 6 feet apart from one another? And they said no, that Governor Cooper did not want us there because it was not an essential meeting, essentially. What was their reasoning? Which is interesting because I have a friend that talked with the woman who got arrested. And what's even more fascinating about the arrest is everybody got in their cars and we started leaving, and it was really almost empty. The parking lot was almost empty of people, and this sole woman was arrested. And from a friend of mine that was still there videotaping, they had about 7 or 8 police officers surrounding her to arrest her, and they had the television cameras on it, and she was completely, compliant with what they were asking. And she even said, the police are doing their job and I'm doing mine. And she was very respectful, and everybody was very respectful. And it was a very positive thing of saying, we want to get back to work, and everybody was cheering and people were beeping their horns. And I think the issue today is, which I don't know, Jeff, if you read the letter, there were 2 senators that are a part of the North Carolina Judiciary Committee, and they're asking for clarification from Governor Cooper as to, did he say that we couldn't meet, or was he upset because we were not social distancing? But the reality is, there were people in groups, like parents with their children. I was there with my kids, but the majority of us, as soon as the police came over, we were saying, make sure you're 6 feet apart, make sure everybody's separated, make sure you're separated. So do you have any information on that as to, has there been a response? What do you think about that?
So I haven't seen a response come back from Governor Cooper. I did see the letter that the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee sent out. I think so. Where exactly did this happen in Raleigh?
This happened in the parking lot that is at, I think it's the corner of Jones and Wilmington, but don't get me on that. It's like right in catty corner to the legislative building, and it's about probably a block away from the governor's mansion.
Yeah, it was right in front of the Archives Museum. So that big open air parking lot in front of the Archives.
So it was done in a place where it was done in a place where you could get your message to the people who make the determinations. Right. So obviously this is kind of a new area in itself, but there are times that the government can place restrictions on when we can assemble. Now, the Supreme Court of the U.S., not North Carolina, but the Supreme Court as a whole has said that people have the right to assemble, and they have a right to assemble in a place where they can not just communicate what they're trying to speak, but to the specific target audience that they're trying to give it to. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I asked where you're located. And the Supreme Court has said that's imperative, and that there are very limited times they can control that. They've approved like curfews when there's a rational reason for it. But the Supreme Court's also ruled in a couple cases, that you can't just have a pure prohibition on it. And when you do, it has to be a very compelling reason, that it's narrowly tailored, and that there's alternate means for communication. The problem here is that the government has said that you have to be 6 feet apart. If you are 6 feet apart and not gathering larger than the order has, I'm not sure what the legal grounds is. The other thing is, it's not really a time, place, and manner restriction, which is normally allowed. They're just kind of like what Sheriff Baker did with the purchase permits. If I won't let you do it whatsoever, it's a prohibition. And for you to do that, they have to be able to show those 3 things. I don't think in this case they can.
And I think another thing is, where does it, like, I had read, or I think Angela and I were talking last night about the fact that in public places, like in a Lowe's or Home Depot or a grocery store, I was under the impression that it's 1%? Is it 1% of the square foot? That's the number of people that can be in. Like, for instance, if you're a 30,000 square foot building, there can be 300 people at one time. Is that what was in there, Angela?
I think Travis corrected me and said it was 20% last night.
20%. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
I think.
What I understand, and I could be wrong,
Okay.
I believe 20% of capacity of what the fire code.
Oh,
And one of the viewers might know. So did you guys see the comments I posted? So I did encourage people to ask questions since we did have Jeff on the line. Gerald says, thanks for what you are doing. Keep it up. We'll work to have your back. Adrian, I missed at what point he said it because my Wi-Fi went out for a second. That's why I'm sitting in a dark living room. Sorry. Adrian said, something had him outraged. No shock there. So if you guys have any questions, or if you know that thing that you're talking about with the restrictions inside of a building where you can, I mean, if the grocery store is allowing more than 10 people in, it doesn't make sense that they're not doing the same thing in a public parking lot or in open air, right? Weren't we trying to say something like that yesterday, Jeff? Just casually talking about it.
Yeah, so it says the order even says that outdoor activities are authorized so long as you remain 6 feet apart from people who aren't immediate family members. So if you're maintaining the distance, unless you're in a massive group and there's some concern about whether or not you needed to have a permit, then there's really no, from what I understand, no reason why they should have just broke everybody up and then decided to arrest people for it.
well, and if I read the letter correctly, Reopen NC actually did get a permit to be
I mean, so if they had a permit to assemble there, then I mean the government issued the permit for them to be there.
Right.
I haven't seen the permits.
And I may have read the letter wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it said in the letter that they had a permit. But I mean, beyond that, I think the issue is the real issue is going to be where it goes from here in terms of Angela and I were talking before, and tomorrow the governors are supposed to have a meeting, a teleconference with President Trump, and President Trump is going to tell each state individually the dates that their task force thinks that they should be able to open. And then it's going to be up to the governors in order to make that rollout happen. So I think it's going to be very telling what date President Trump tells Governor Cooper that he thinks that we should open up, because the real impetus for this was not to get North Carolina to open up tomorrow. The impetus was that last week, Governor Cooper said, oh, it might be not until June 7th that we can open up in North Carolina. And that's when this all started, saying, you need to give us some facts and some data and some reasons for why you would extend this another essentially 6 weeks. And when there's nothing coming and there's no, there's been no communication, and it's all just, I'm going to do what I want to do is how it feels. And with the arrest and everything yesterday, that just kind of accentuated that sense,
Here's
think.
Another comment, if you guys want to multitask there, from Gerald. Can you all see that?
Uh-huh.
Governor Cooper said no gatherings of any size. If we simply show up as unaffiliated individuals, there is no violation. So I don't know about that. I mean, I feel that way, but I don't know if the law reads that way because we've never been here before, right? Jeff, can you tell us what happened like with the Spanish flu of, what is it, 1918? Is there any comparable? I mean, that's a comparable event, right?
No,
so
because the Spanish flu was killing millions. But anyway.
Yes, but as far as lockdowns, closing public schools, churches, all that, I think did occur with that incident, right?
I mean, it did. So the problem is when that was, nobody tried to challenge what happened then. So there are challenges with the freedom to assemble, and some of the cases that I've looked through are as close as 2008. And the court has said, you have the First Amendment right is your right to speech and assemble. Mm-hmm. And they essentially go hand in hand. And, you can have a rational basis test if it's content neutral, meaning they're not trying to scribe out what information's being put out and they're just kind of blanketing everybody. But the problem is they're just a complete prohibition on assembly. And
Mhm.
there's been a couple different cases where it's just talked about, and the Supreme Courts have gone on to say that you have to have the right to assemble. You have to have the right when you go to speak during protests to be able to communicate it, as long as it's reasonable, to the people you're trying to get the message to. The thing is, North Carolina citizens are trying to go out and say, hey, look, we want to reopen. You're our elected official. How else are they supposed to get those messages out? Cooper's not reading letters. I'm going to guarantee you that's not what he's doing. But he will notice if there's hundreds of people 6 feet apart outside of his office building going, we want to make the decision to accept the risk and put food on our table, keep our businesses from going bankrupt, and take care of ourselves and our families. And I personally don't think that if this was taken to trial that it would survive on the arrest. But I mean, every judge interprets the law and the case law differently, and I would like to see what would happen if it goes in front of the judiciary.
So will
Yeah,
whoops.
Somebody was saying, I think it was Michelle was saying they had a permit. You don't have to have a permit for a
That's
protest.
right. Yeah, you
First of
shouldn't,
all,
because you have the right to assemble.
Right.
you don't have a permit from the government to assemble on
In a parking lot.
sidewalk. Okay. And so the permit thing is irrelevant, whether they had one or not. You do not need one to gather. You do not need one to assemble. And from what I understand, everyone was standing 6 feet apart. And when the riot police showed up, they were not standing 6 feet apart.
No, they were not.
Right away, they're already breaking Governor Cooper's order for 6 feet apart. So why does the law not apply to the government, but it only applies to citizens trying to protest? That's what I want to know.
So I think in general, when you look, law enforcement are allowed some exceptions when it comes to things. That's why a law enforcement officer who can turn his blue lights on and speed and go after somebody or respond. I think their argument would be the same thing here, is that in order to control the situation, they put a large number of officers together and they got within that 6 foot distance. I'm not saying that's necessarily the best argument, but if I was a government official, that's probably one I would tend to lean on, is that law enforcement has the right, when exercising state police power, to circumvent some rules and laws in certain situations. But in that situation, it shouldn't. What do they benefit from standing right next to each other, unless you're in a mass crowd and they're trying to form a wall? I think the other thing we should look at, especially when it comes to with what happened with RPD, is from what I read today, RPD had someone who tested positive for COVID-19 and they failed to disclose it even to the office. And if that's going on and then your officers aren't following the policies of the governor, like, how much can the local populace trust their law enforcement body,
Right.
or at least the heads of it?
Right.
So it's like COVID for me, but not for thee, or something like that. We hear this blank for me, but not for thee, and you can fill in the blank, and the government is always guilty of that. They're always being hypocritical of that. And I'm sure Travis can vent on that too. But so what about the churches?
They can't do an illegal U-turn. They'll pull you over for doing a U-turn, and then in the middle of the road, and then they'll do it right, anytime they want to. I've seen them do it.
Yeah. And let's make it clear, we don't have a problem with law enforcement, right? I mean, they're doing their job. They're supposed to be controlling crowds, right? And I don't know, Jeff might be able to speak to what the duty of law enforcement is, because it's not even technical that it's their obligation to protect and serve, right? Like the cars sometimes say, like, there are limitations there too, right? Um,
I mean, every state's a little different based off of how they decide to exercise their state power, and it's hard for law enforcement because they're expected to know the law to the extent an attorney does, or they get yelled at for not doing it wrong, but they're not given that formal education, which you just can't. It's too much information. So it's I get that they're doing the best they can, but at the same time, sometimes it's the decision that's coming from the upper level management, and those managers need to know what's going on. You should know. I mean, I was in the military. I knew what the guys beneath me were doing. If I knew they were breaking the rules, then I need to fix it. So I don't blame the guys at the bottom who are getting in their patrol cars and putting it on the line every day. But your law enforcement set the standard, and if you're a management and law enforcement, make sure your people are setting the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be nice. So, can you explain what the violation was with the young lady who did go and get arrested? Did you see what happened with that, Jeff?
So, from what I understand, she just refused to leave. Now, if without knowing exactly where she was and if it was government property or private property, if you're on government property and a government official in any capacity tells you to leave and you refuse to leave, I mean, it is second-degree trespassing. That's the same thing that happened when they were protesting in the Capitol building about a year and a half or 2 years ago, where they arrested them all for staying past 5 o'clock. So, I mean, if she was on a government parking lot and they told her to leave and she didn't, then they have grounds to arrest her. But I don't think what I was talking about is the 6 feet apart, unless you're riding in a squad car with your partner. If we're supposed to be 6 feet apart, you shouldn't be 6 feet together, just hanging out and talking about what's going on.
Let me see if I could share one of these articles. I don't know if you guys can see that. I haven't played with that option enough. Can you see anything, guys?
No.
No? All right, forget it. That's why I haven't used it, because I hate technology. Yeah, so I understood that she got arrested by the state police, so I didn't know what the difference was between RPD and the state police, and what kind of charges she might face. But I thought she was a great example, kind of like the Virginia rally where the Second Amendment was defended by supposedly law-abiding citizens. There was no violent outbreak as predicted by mainstream media or whoever. And it was a peaceful day. They cleaned up after themselves. And so this woman is kind of like a champion for liberty, I would say, because, she was quoted by the media, like before they took her away, she was like, "God bless America." And I'm like, you couldn't have been more iconic than that. Go her, I feel like I need to write her a letter. But I think she also had said right before that, I believe it's my right to be here, or something along those lines. So that's not something I disagree with, even if they did push back and say, okay, well, we're going to take you to jail. I felt like I had the right to be there. I was holding up a sign that said that assemble clause. I had the right to peaceably assemble. And my daughter was holding up the one for the right to religion. And I don't remember that word for word, but to practice my religion. Because I was put the way code in his proclamation, religious organizations weren't necessarily deemed essential. So I think that was the problem with that. So it was like if you were a nonprofit or a charity that was helping feed the community or servicing economically disadvantaged, then I think you could get by. But I think whatever the media covered made churches nervous to even have that drive-up service. So I think, again, it was dealing with the right to assemble. Our pastor just was inviting people to a drive-up service. We weren't even, told we could get out of our cars and hang out. You're going to stay in your car and listen from loudspeakers. And he got nervous and he felt like, as a pastor, he should obey the government. And then I pushed back a little, saying I didn't think the government had this authority. So that was why I was bothered. And I brought that up with you too yesterday, Jeff. You have any thoughts on that? Religious is a touchy subject, right? But it goes back to assembling, right? Are you there? You look frozen.
He might
Yeah,
be
I
frozen.
think he is. I think he is.
Or he's holding his
You
breath
were
for a
breaking
really
up a little
long
bit.
time.
Totally frozen.
No.
Don't forget to breathe, Jeff. Okay, well, maybe we lost him. He could always disconnect and come back in, maybe.
No. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I hear
Can
you.
you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
go.
Okay.
You're back. Woohoo.
Yeah. So I heard that. I mean, it would be with the same thing. I think that if you're going to a private property, you're staying the 6 feet away. I mean, if you look at a lot of other states, drive-in movie theaters have come back because it gives you a way to get out of your home and do something. So if you're not invading that 6-foot space and you're not putting other people at risk, I don't understand what the problem is really. So you have the right to assemble. The problem is when you're in an unprecedented area like this, the government's gonna do what they do, and unless someone is willing to risk it and challenge it, then we're just kind of stuck. And Benjamin Franklin said way back when, if you're willing to sacrifice freedom for security, then you deserve neither. So I mean, I get that this is a pandemic. I get that everybody's at risk. I mean, I go in and out of jails, in and out of courthouses. I have clients who come in my office. I have a huge likelihood of getting exposed to it, but I make that choice to go to work 5 days a week. I could try to work remote. I could not see clients, but they deserve to see an attorney if they want it. And if you want to make the choice to go back and open your job so you can pay for food and pay for necessities, you should be able to exercise that. But someone's going to have to be willing to take the risk for us to be able to make the court say whether we can or not.
And I think to piggyback off of what Jeff is saying, I think herein lies the problem. The United States, our attitude is when a crisis hits, we tend to band together and we tend to care about our fellow man. I mean, across the board. Okay, so when this started coming out and it's first happened, it seemed like we were worried because we didn't know how many people were going to be impacted. We didn't know, what the death percentage, the mortality rate was going to be. And so everybody willingly said, okay, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of my freedom. I'm going to sacrifice some of my money and I'm going to stay home and I'm going to see, if I can be a part of the solution. The problem is they've taken that compassion and now they're abusing it. Okay, now they're using this as a tool of saying, you're wicked, you're evil, you're going to kill people if you go about your life. And the reality is, if we look at the number of people that have to be hospitalized for this disease, 90% of them are over 65. So let's just think about this logically for a moment. How many of them are actually still in the workforce? Right? I mean, the majority of people over 65 have retired. Okay, but for those that are still in the workforce, if you have an immunocompromised system, if you choose to not go back to work, I think we should absolutely pay them to stay home for another month, right? If they have some kind of medical condition or they are in a high risk group and they don't feel like they feel confident to come back to the work.
He's coughing.
Well,
I have allergies. I grew up in Idaho. I don't do this pollen very well.
Yeah.
I don't either.
And so
every time I cough, everybody's like, "You got coronavirus?"
I don't think it comes through screens yet. I think we're pretty safe. But
we're all dead.
But my point is that we need to tell able-bodied heads of households that you cannot go back to work and take that risk because there's a certain entity of people that feel threatened by being around people. Well, then don't be around people. I am fully for keeping the 1 hour, how a lot of the grocery stores and Walmarts, they have the first hour that they're opening early and they're allowing older people to come and shop. Let's keep that going. And for all intents and purposes, let's make it so that we can deliver these people their groceries. Let's make a call-in system because most of them aren't going to be ordering on the internet. But we've had for over a year or two, even here in Cary, the ability to order ahead your groceries and basically drive your car up and have somebody put them in the back of your car. And so why aren't we saying, hey, let's give that as a free gift to the people that are over 60, here in North Carolina. We're going to do that for the next month so they can get what they need, but they don't have to get out in public if they're concerned. There are ways that we can still be compassionate toward the people who are at high risk of getting this disease, but also allow the economy to get back up and running for those who have strong immune systems and have not been impacted. I mean, they're now saying that they want to test everybody because they think a lot of people have it or had it and they didn't even know it. Well, you know what that tells you? It tells you that the mortality rate is getting smaller and smaller. If they test and now 50,000 people test positive and have antibodies for COVID-19 and they never even had a sniffle, that tells you, okay, we can go back to work.
He has the sniffles.
Yeah.
Just
So
kidding.
I just think that we're in a dangerous position when we have a governor who has gone against the vote of 63% of our country, of our state rather, that said we wanted voter ID. He's vetoed that. And as far as I'm concerned, the man does not have a leg to stand on to talk about morality and the risk of people's lives when he vetoed the Born Alive Act. You can't start saying that the reason you're doing this is to protect human life. You just can't.
So without getting too political, Jeff, did you have time to look? You see the North Carolina Constitution quite a bit, probably. What about religious liberty? I'll read it and tell me if it sounds familiar because I printed it like 3 years ago, but I don't think anything has changed. It says Section 13, religious liberty. All persons have a natural and inalienable right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences, and no human authority shall, in any case whatever, control or interfere with the rights of conscience. So we don't hear people talk about the rights of conscience quite a bit. So that comes up in like abortion cases, from what I understand. Like, so if a nurse does not want to assist with an abortion service, that might happen about in the hospital setting that she's in, not necessarily working in an abortion clinic or whatever, that she has the right to say, I can't do this because it goes against my core beliefs. And that doesn't even have to be religious beliefs. That is just her core being, right? She's just like, I can't do it. It's against what I believe in. So that's kind of where I thought I was like, it's Easter Sunday. I need to go to be where people are. I'm willing to stick out my 3-foot arm and stay within my distance. But am I going to jail today? So I agreed to retain somebody on Sunday morning right before I went. So sorry, long-winded question.
So a lot of professions, even in North Carolina. So if I had a client retain me and I got into the case and it was so morally repugnant that I couldn't provide him a proper legal defense, that I could recuse myself from the case. I'd have to get a judge's permission and explain it, and I could. I think what you would hear the government argue is, we're not saying that you can't exercise your religion, because no one's saying don't be Catholic, don't be Mormon, don't be whatever. But we're just, it's very much a freedom of assembly. I think it kind of blurs the line, because you're right, a lot of religions said you should do it and together in public to show that you're proud of what you are, and sometimes that inhibits it. So I mean, you could probably have a ground saying, well, you're not just impacting my freedom of assembly, but my freedom of my religion, because my religion says that I need to be here on Sunday, or I need to be here on Easter, and now I can't even do that.
Well put. Yeah, and I think that would take challenging too. So I need to walk around like this. Go ahead, do it, Travis. We got to walk around like this next Tuesday if we go to that protest. Say, take me away.
Yeah.
But then we will be paying Jeff.
It goes.
Oh no, let me put up his banner again. Let everybody know Jeff's business. This is Jeff's business here, not the three of us.
Yeah, like it's going back to you got into the abortion thing, and it's like such a sensitive subject, but the company or hospital that you're working for can legally fire you for not doing your job. And you have to understand that if you decide that I have a moral conscience and I don't want to perform this duty, they're going to say, I respect that, but you're fired. They're allowed to do
Actually, the law protects that. For the, I mean, it's one thing if you're going into, let's say, an abortion clinic and you're working there, you're not going to sit there and say, "Oh, I really can't do this every day," and you're just going to sit in the background. But if you're stop sneezing. But if you are, I mean, having worked as a nurse, if, for instance, I mean, there was a case that was up north that was a nurse that worked as a surgical nurse, and she let them know that she was not going to participate in abortions, and they literally shoved her into a room and said, you have to be in here because we don't have a nurse. The other nurse is out sick or whatever. And she won that case because the fact is that if you have made it known that you do not want to participate in that, that's not your job to fill somebody else's role that didn't show up for work. Does that make sense? I mean, like,
okay, yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense. But I mean, that typically doesn't happen in a hospital.
No, but that's because typically when you are, I mean, being a nurse, when you are in a hospital, you specifically have a role that you know what you're going to be doing every day, right? And
right.
So
if you're, most abortions are taking place at an abortion clinic, and if you get hired there, and maybe you're
but what I'm saying is if you're conscious, if you have a conscious objection to abortion and you're going to go try to work in an abortion clinic, you got more problems than just getting fired.
Right.
Yeah. We're going to check out your social, emotional, whatever.
Not happening at Wake Med and Duke Hospital. This is not where you go. So, I mean, it's a very rare case that you would be forced into doing some sort of procedure that you don't believe in.
Right. But what I'm saying is when that has happened, there are cases that they were threatened to be fired and the actual employees won that for the very thing that Angela just read.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, but at the same time, I see the employees, if they say, I need you to do this, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. They're going to go, well, I kind of need you to do that.
Yeah, you're thinking more like insubordination. Like if you just say, I ain't doing that.
Sweep the floor. Oh, I didn't get hired to sweep the floor. Well, sorry. It's what I need you to do. And if you don't do it, then you're fired. It's a right to work state. So I could see both sides. I really can.
So let's get back to assembling. If some of us are going to assemble next Tuesday, if the governor takes no action, should people be afraid? No, because they need to set the standard. We need people who are brave and willing to say, no, these are my rights. That's what the takeaway is here, right? The government the government is not afraid of 4 people, no one's going to behave just because you think that's the right thing for them to do. You have to put some pressure on them. So, my rights have been eroded several times, not only by the local government, by the water utility, whatever. We got a 10% tax. So unless I'm willing to sue all these people for what I believe in, they're not going to change. They need pressure to behave, and they're not going to behave just because we want them to do the right thing. That's never going to happen. So, I don't know. Any final words, Jeff? Sorry if we're like so rambling on and off on all these tangents.
You're fine. So the saying is it doesn't take a majority of the population to change the way society works, but it takes a tireless, relentless minority setting brush fires of freedom. And that's been around since that saying came around when the Constitution was written. The thing is, if we wanted to change, yes, people are going to have to go out there and say, this is what we want. They're elected officials. They should be doing what the population, the majority of the population, what it takes is wants. I mean, but it doesn't take all of us going out there. It just takes enough people to get that fire lit for change to be necessary. Otherwise, it will impact every reelection. You're going to see people out there, and when, unfortunately, people just kind of generally believe whatever they hear today. So if you can get enough people screaming something, you can cost somebody an election. So if enough people will go out there and go, look, you're not doing what we want. You're an elected official. You're doing whatever you want. And you can get people to scream it, they'll go away. But if you want to exercise your right to assemble, I think you should be free to. I think that there's a lot of case law that can that would support it, but I think that they're going to continue to do what they want until someone says, I don't think you can.
Until someone puts on the Braveheart paint. Michelle,
Well,
are you going to do it?
Yeah, I'll do that next week.
Won't take my freedom.
Right. With my 5 kids in tow, maybe they'll have compassion.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that happened with the Wake County Sheriff deal. I mean,
Yeah.
If somebody didn't step up and file a motion and file a complaint, we probably still wouldn't be able to, apply for pistol permits and concealed weapons permits. Like Jeff was saying, it only takes one person irate enough to do it. And it's the same thing with any rights or any freedoms that are being trampled on.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do it, then somebody else is going to have to do it.
Did you guys see in one state they were having people drive up to give out those pistol purchase permits? It was like a happy day for that area. I don't think it was NC though. Did you see that, Jeff?
I didn't. I've been pretty busy and haven't had a lot of time to look at news.
All right,
plus, I'm tired of seeing COVID everywhere.
Yes.
Well, hopefully we didn't bog you down with stressors times 3 here, right? We had questions, but hopefully it benefits anybody that's willing to watch. It is a public video. We can download it later whenever I learn how, and we could share it. But I think it was a good talk, and hopefully people will be encouraged to defend their rights. I do like what the audience said tonight. It looked like a few people are watching, and they could share this after the recording has ended and comment and post questions and things like that. If you want me to tag your law firm in it to eat up some more of your free time, what little free time you have, Jeff, I'll do that. Or, I can link your website or whatever, and they can reach out to you if they get arrested next Tuesday. And hopefully they'll bring you
some work.
business. Yeah, I would like people to bring these other community aides some business. So I do appreciate you greatly for coming on and working with that pistol permit purchase. You do. So I think you're doing a good thing. I would like to see more attorneys step up and help out when needed. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And we can let you go if you want. And I think the 3 of us were going to hang on and maybe chat some politics after if you guys want to. But you guys want to say thank you to Jeff and let him get on with his family life?
Thank you.
Thank you,
thanks.
Jeff.
Have a good night, guys.
You too.
Ooh.
All right. Here, let me fix that.
Let me turn big heads.
Yeah, that's better. That was awesome.
So that was interesting, I think. So yeah, people need to really take their rights by the reins. Let me go back to the comments. So whoever said maybe you should have rights cards for people. So I don't know if people realize, like, we already give a lot of our time to volunteerism. We're always looking for more people to join us, be active, defend liberty, put your party aside and figure out where people can come together and collaborate, figure out what people agree on, right? And that rally last week, I think Travis and I talked about a couple of loopholes that we saw, like and Michelle as well. We talked about, they might block off that parking lot next Tuesday.
I'm pretty sure they will.
Yeah, if it makes it to that point, I feel like there are going to be more barriers. So with that in mind, I would love for someone to help lead that group. And, I'm not that person. I don't think. I'm happy to come along and serve because I have too many irons in the fire everywhere else. But someone writing down the Bill of Rights or something like that would be awesome. Or if, a nonprofit showed up just to hand out copies of the Constitution, that would be awesome. The U.S. Constitution or the North Carolina State Constitution, anything like that to get people informed and educated. So I mentioned my little copy here, last night and showed people. I think we even zoomed in. Or no, Travis, you read the First Amendment, right?
Right, I did. Yes.
Woohoo!
Read it again.
Huh?
Read it again.
Okay, I got to flip to it. So Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That?
That's a good one. Yeah.
Oh no, now Travis is coughing. Maybe it is catching.
Wait,
I was
Exactly the same.
I was going to say this. I think not only is it essential that we get out and we let our elected officials know what we think, it is incredibly uniting and encouraging to people who are at home who see other North Carolina citizens who are speaking what they're thinking and feeling. And I think that's one of the other thing that is essential about assembling and having groups, because when you recognize that you are not alone in what you're thinking and feeling, and you recognize, oh, wait a minute, there might even be, like a constitutional amendment that supports what I'm thinking and feeling. I think that is what is valued. We are supposed to be a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And for far too long, we have allowed a handful of people in government to make all of the decisions. And we have just walked around with our head down and just assumed that the only thing we do is we vote every couple of years, right? And that's
not good enough. Voting is that's not holding people accountable, I don't think.
Absolutely. And the other thing is we need to have solutions. Like I was talking about, we can't just say, do this and then leave all of the decisions and the ideas up to them. People crave leaders who have a plan and who have an answer. And that's one of the big things too that we're frustrated with the Governor Cooper is there has been no plan. There has been no conversation. There has been no discussion of, we should all be rejoicing over the fact that so few people have died. Now, I recognize there are people that are suffering because their family members have died from this illness. But when we think about a month ago, what we were told that potentially we were going to lose 2 million Americans, shouldn't we be saying, okay, thank you. Like something that we did helped. And so let's move forward and be like, all right, we've kind of dodged a bullet, so to speak, and let's move on and learn from what we did that worked. And the next time this comes around, because it will, then we will be better prepared and we will be better able to handle it. But I think,
aren't you an RN? Aren't you you're registered? Can you educate everybody real quick about immunology?
Yeah, just real fast. I'll just explain the whole immune system.
Big word.
Yeah, no, the reality is this. What has been frustrating to me and frightening to me is how fast we have basically said, government, keep us healthy and make us well. The fact of the matter is our immune system is an incredibly miraculous system. And it's not just to fight infection. It's also hormones and metabolism and all kinds of things. But what we're doing is we aren't eating well. We aren't exercising. We aren't drinking water. We aren't getting fresh air. We aren't taking vitamins and minerals that we need. And therefore, our bodies are always kind of fighting something. Okay, so that's why when something like this comes and, they're talking about the comorbidity, the fact that people that are at higher risk already have diabetes and high blood pressure and, issues with their lungs. Well, of course, the reality is when you have a chronic illness, you are always more at risk of dying or really suffering with another illness on top of it. Okay. So I've said to people, We need the numbers because we need the encouragement of the number of people that have been treated successfully with hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. And I'm going to say this too, because the researchers, we have to remember there's a difference between medical doctors who are researchers and medical doctors who are on the ground treating people's illnesses. Researchers are paid to research. Okay, so what do they want to do? They want to take COVID-19 and they want to put it into a petri dish, and they want to go through petri dish, then they want to go to animal testing, then they want to go to human testing, and they want to say that these drugs that I just mentioned, which have been around for decades, they're trying to say that those have not been tested. And the reality is that's a lie. Those drugs went through the hydroxychloroquine and the azithromycin, went through testing just like every other drug on our market. They went through petri dish, animal testing, and the human clinical trials. And now that's why we know the side effects. That's why we know who should take it and who shouldn't. So to say that it is untested is absolutely deceiving to the American people, because it makes them feel like, oh, I'm going to be a lab rat. Somebody I love is going to just be, who knows, they might die from this. Well, the reality is they might die from COVID-19. And so if they take the medication, yeah, you're probably going to have side effects from it. But if it's going to keep you from dying, are you willing to risk a few side effects? Because the reality is we know what to expect with side effects with these medications. It is only untested on COVID-19. But I tell people, I would rather take a drug. If I'm struggling with COVID-19, I would rather take a drug that has healed 100 people in my state than to take a drug that has only helped rats. I mean,
so if someone comes down with COVID-19, I think a lot of people, so if you have a fever, our first response is to go take a fever reducer, an NSAID, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, whatever the D stands for. But that's not the recommendation with COVID. You're supposed to let it cook, right? Because that's the body's natural defense. So I thought you would tell me like how to cook a virus, but you were like,
I'll tell you how to cook a virus. I used to do this as my job. I would answer people's questions about how to treat illness, and what people are constantly worried that they have a fever for 2 or 3 days. You don't need to worry. That means your immune system is working. Okay. If your fever goes above 105 and you cannot get it down with NSAIDs, like your, either Tylenol or ibuprofen, then you might be concerned and you might want to go in and be seen. But the reality is our body uses fever to kill off disease. You need to stay hydrated. Water, water, water. And with COVID-19, what has happened with people is it creates a very thick mucus. Our body naturally creates a mucus in order to drown, essentially, a virus, okay? But what happens is that's why it ends up, you actually have, it takes 3 weeks for our body to have an antibody response, enough that's going to give you lifelong immunity to a disease. All of us decide after we feel crappy for 2 days, oh, I better get a drug. Okay. Now, I will tell you that analgesics, Tylenol, ibuprofen, those are not going to inhibit your body's immune response. In terms of it, you're still going to be creating antibodies. But when you take antivirals, it does cut that. Okay, but
Michele, let's stop you there, because let's avoid you getting sued for giving medical advice too, and let everybody know, hey, we're not giving medical advice. Just like last night, someone said that's not the appropriate COVID mask that Izzy, my daughter, did with just scissors, and it was a non-sew mask. It was a t-shirt sleeve. So I just want viewers to know, hey, these are opinions. This is not medical advice. Just like Jeff was not giving bona fide legal advice. We're just talking things out loud. So,
but I will tell people, if you have symptoms of any respiratory illness, the thing that is best is to drink warm, clear fluids. Stay away from dairy. It increases the thickness of your mucus. Just stay hydrated. And if you have problems breathing, if you have chest pain and those things, if you have a fever that lasts more than 4 days, absolutely go to the emergency room and be treated. But also give yourself time to fight off an infection. Vitamin C is huge. Vitamin D is huge. Vitamin A is huge. Zinc has been proven to kill viruses. I mean, there's so many things that we can do that you can just go and get, from Walmart.
That is such a big comment. It blocks out our heads.
Oh, can you not? Yeah, precisely.
What do you guys think about that?
Appropriately, sure.
I don't know what part of. I don't know if he's in North Carolina.
Yeah,
you're running for governor. Wait.
So I'll read it. If elected in November, I would sponsor a precisely worded resolution or possibly appropriate legislation to ensure our governor's office or any state office cannot infringe on our constitutional rights as citizens unless a federal martial law is in effect. So I don't know if that might be actually overkill, because I think if you had the right person leading the state, you would never have to deal with that. What do you guys think?
And don't you think our Constitution kind of says that? I mean,
yeah, I think it's creating redundant legislation, but it's a good idea. I mean, when you shoot out ideas, it just propels better ideas, right? So thank you, David, for sharing. Adrian Travers is saying microwave vodka to treat COVID. I don't know. That sounds gross.
I haven't heard about that.
I have heard of
Adrian's probably right about this. He's actually a bartender. He's a very skilled bartender, and probably knows a lot of secrets about.
Yeah, I've heard of hottie toddies. Have y'all? That's a warm drink, and
and I think it's important for everybody to remember that every medication that we have came from something that already exists in the world, either in a food or an herb or a plant or some, you know what I'm saying? Like food is supposed to be our medicine. And so if we're doing that and starting there, the other thing is Schweppes tonic water that has quinine in it. They had said, there was doctors that had said that 3 ounces twice a day of that actually helps to kill the virus. But the downside of that is if you take too much quinine, you can get tinnitus, which is, like ringing in the ears, which is miserable. But I mean, if you're dying, I'll take a little bit.
I have all the time.
Yeah. Oh, really? You have tinnitus.
Too much loud music, though.
I mean, all that to say, I just want people to think about this for a minute, that I don't know when it became the government's job to keep me healthy, or when it became other people's job in the community to keep me healthy.
What about keeping you fed too?
Right. I mean, it's
but like healthy, yeah.
Because when you start giving people that power, you're losing your own rights. Like, right?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Travis? You always get comments about the government, right?
The government.
I meant this, Chris.
A government big enough to give you everything is a government big enough to take everything from you. And it's not the government's responsibility to legislate morality. It's not their responsibility to tell you how to live
thank
your
you.
life.
I got light.
Oh, that looks so much better. It's
Sorry.
not government's responsibility to mandate your lifestyle and how you want to live. It's not their job to do this. Their job is basically to do 17 things in the Constitution, and that is it.
Do you know them? Do you know them, Groo?
I don't have it in front of me. But
that would be awesome if you did, though. If you were like, yeah, number 1, boom.
Yeah, we have let the government get extremely too big, and I blame the back and forth pendulum swinging. Republicans vote for this, and then it swings the other way, and it goes to the Democrat side, and then it goes back, and then all these laws just keep getting passed. And really, every time the pendulum swings one way, your personal liberties and your civil liberties and the Constitution suffers every time it swings. And that's why I'm a big advocate for more than two parties. I believe we should have way more than two parties so that it's more diverse. It's less of a pendulum swing, and it's less of a drastic movement across. Because once they pass a law or pass a tax, guess what? It's not coming back very easily.
No.
That's right.
Once the taxes go up and once these programs start happening, I mean, look at all these government programs that we have going on right now that are worthless.
Yeah.
They're not working. They're not
Like
needed.
98% of them.
Yes.
Travis, have you
You're right.
have you been tracking the amount of money Wake County government has been spending since this COVID craziness?
No, I have not.
Oh man. Because they just did that 10% tax last year. Then they did property reassessment, and then someone else brought it up who's active in politics recently. She was like, I think right at the very beginning, the first week, she was saying, wasn't it like upwards of 8 million? Michelle, do you know?
No, I haven't paid attention.
It's going to be a large. That number is going to grow.
A 10% property tax is absolutely
Outrageous.
unreal.
Outrageous. And I mean, that is a perfect example, that property tax, that is a perfect example of them doing exactly the opposite of what the citizens said. I mean, we literally we literally had over 200 people in 4 different meetings go in there, and I think 3 people were in favor of raising it. It was supposed to be 9%, right? Wasn't it supposed to be just 9% to cover over these stupid bonds that everybody keeps voting for because they don't understand what they are? And we all said, no, don't do it. And they said, oh, we aren't just going to raise it 9, we're going to raise it 10. Just because we are 9 people and we have the capacity to control how many hundreds of thousands that live in Wake County,
Well,
Yeah. Wake County's in crazy territory. So if anybody's watching is not familiar with Wake County government, it's one party groupthink right now. They were elected by the dense population in Raleigh. So if anyone from the Raleigh area is listening and is tired of being taxed and not realizing that when they vote in for education bonds, that's more money for the schools, but that's also more money for the schools to waste and come back for more the following budget season, which is every stinking year.
Yep.
Around this time is where they start. Well, I think they start as early as December, but with this virus, it's another opportunity for those people who like to spend and have repetitive patterns of spending frivolously to just continue to come for more. So if there's some critical things you could take away, bonds are taxes on yourself. Taxes is taking money out of your family household and giving it to someone else, sort of like redistribution. So just to recap, we got a 10% property tax in Wake County last April or May, I think it was passed.
Increase. Right.
Increase.
Yeah.
We got our properties. So if you own a home, we get reassessed every 4 years.
So they're all worth more.
Yeah, and there were drastic differences across Wake County from one property value compared to another. It's like, so some of the homes in Wake in the Raleigh region were valued at like $25,000, which is insanely too low. So it will be hard to find a shack or a dump that is valued at $25,000 realistically in Raleigh. There's some nice homes in Raleigh. I mean, it's hard to find anything that's not less than $150K in the Raleigh area. You know what I mean? So, so what it looked like from a distance was you have the residential, the building value, and then you have your acreage value. So it looked like in the Raleigh area, the residences were undervalued, but the property was a little bit overvalued, or it stayed close to what it was the former reassessment year. So they do need some serious checking. So if there's some people watching the live broadcast or are going to watch later, I mean, it would be awesome if people would take time to dig into some of these issues, the budget in Wake County, if they live in Wake County, or attend. That is probably going to be virtual right now, but attend a Wake County virtual meeting. So they meet 2 times a month. They're supposed to meet the same day, the same time, every time. And they talk about issues going on in the county. So a lot of times you see them doing things and you might have questions. That's a great time to reach out to them. They all have, I think, cell phone numbers. You should be able to contact them. And they all have email addresses where you can communicate with all of them with one simple email address. So I don't know if any of you ever have, but just putting those tools out there. But, oops, I didn't realize we were going over an hour. I was rambling. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to bring up one point on what you were talking about with the housing. One of the biggest issues we're having right now in Wake County is affordable housing and housing affordability. We need to allow duplexes and triplexes by right wherever single family homes are permitted in low density areas. We need to allow builders to create the missing middle housing opportunities where currently zoning encourages very large single family homes. So we're zoning people out right now because certain people don't want an apartment complex or duplex or a townhouse anywhere near their neighborhood. We need to make efficient use of state resources by ensuring transportation dollars are spent on sustainable projects built where people live and work to maximize the impact. Basically, we're just throwing money at transportation, creating more bus lines and buying more buses. And most of the time, there's 3 people on them. They're empty.
I videotaped that the day of that gathering, that illegal gathering.
Billions of dollars going into this transportation system to expand it, and nobody's writing it. I don't know about most people, but they want to drive their own car to work and to other places. They don't want to ride a bus.
Travis, you know what? I wanted to ride a scooter, but everybody started banning them.
And now with Uber and Lyft and cheap transportation that way, less and less people are riding the bus. And we don't have a train system. So why are we expanding a system that's not working?
Oh, look, Gerald wrote something about the constitutions. Another long comment. Oop, it went right over Travis Groo's head. Sorry, Travis. Hang in there for 1 second. So Gerald says, I buy boxes of 100 pocket constitutions. When I travel for work, I carry a few extra. I give them out when people misquote the Constitution or amendments and ask the person to point out what in the Constitution or Bill of Rights supports their point. You would laugh at how many aha moments I have witnessed when they actually read. The 2 most misunderstood are the First and Second Amendments. Yeah, I can see the confusion with those 2. They're pretty deep. Just getting into the conscience, assembly, petition, redress the government. There's a lot of stuff in that First Amendment. So,
but they're also the only 2 that we ever talk about. So that's probably why they're the most misunderstood.
Yeah, it's very
in reality.
Yeah, we need to work on memorizing the first 10, me included, because when the second is taken away, it affects, I believe, 4, not just the Second Amendment. So illegal searches and seizures, but we can come back and do another talk about that in the future. But Michele, should we mention that? Are we going to come back tomorrow and talk to another attorney about our rights, or?
Well, I'll have to check and see. I didn't know the date that I should ask him. Yeah, no, that's all right. I think we might want to wait and see what happens with what the date is and maybe what Cooper's response is going to be. Because like I said earlier, if if he's told by the president's task force, you should open on May 1st, and he says, okay, we're going to start moving toward that, there's not even going to be a reason to go and assemble. But then we can
That's
just kind of
supposed to
hold
happen.
his. What's that?
When is that supposed to happen?
Well, tomorrow is the day that all of the governors are supposed to be on a teleconference with the president, and his task force has basically lined out every when they believe every government should, or every state should try to start opening, because he said a lot of them haven't been touched by COVID at all, and so they're ready pretty much to open next Monday. So they were going to suggest that, handed the baton to the governors and let them manage how it was going to be handled.
Yeah. Oh,
Sounds
okay.
good. Sounds good. Well, let's sign off for today. We'll come up with a game plan. So people didn't post a lot of comments about the right to assemble, except Adrian, Gerald, and thank you for that. Thanks, guys, for participating. I do appreciate it. We are in new territory. I mean, even the three of us are experimenting with this, seeing if we can hash out some issues with different opinions. The three of us don't agree on everything necessarily. So the world is not that way either. We all don't agree on every single little thing, but there's one thing the founders did do, like I mentioned last night. There was Federalist Papers and anti-Federalist Papers. So they were contrasting opinions. So
Yeah.
I would welcome a healthy debate without the name calling, without, what was happening to you, Michele, with your children. You got hate comments.
Oh, telling me that they should be taken away and that I was an unfit
what?
mother.
Because you want to reopen and see?
What?
Because I was at the parking lot with my kids in the car.
That's
but you know what? My thing is, we are so emotional, and it's so easy to manipulate people through fear. And unfortunately, while there was things to be feared about at the beginning of this COVID-19, that's what I was saying, that I feel like they're abusing that now, because there is much more to be hopeful about and much more to be positive about than there is to be negative about at this point. And that's the message that I want to get out to people, that, just, you aren't victims. It seems like a lot of people like to live there.
I ain't there. Look, I'm going to pop up Jeff's website one more time. He's no longer with us, but you can always go back after the broadcast ends and listen to the legal opinion of Jeff Dobson, who is running this law firm, Dobson Law Firm. And so he did give us some very useful input. So I'm going to say thank you guys for coming on and talking out the issues with me, and we'll see where this goes in the future. Say good night to Facebook.
Good night, Facebook.
Good night, Wake County, right?
Yeah. Thanks for saying, Travis.
To what?
What'd you say, Travis?
Oh, I said have a good night. Peace.
Yeah.
Peace out. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.